Hello and welcome to the video lecture about the brain. My name is Oleg, and in this video you will find out the structure and functions of different parts of the brain, brief overview of the text, exercises, plus grammar revision, and several interesting facts about the topic. You can find the timestamp of each part down in the description. It's the third lecture about the nervous system, and the links to the previous videos you can also find in the description. The human brain is an incredibly complex system that processes a wide variety of information. But what exactly goes on inside our heads? I don't mean the head like this, but a head in general. Let's look at some of the vocabulary used to describe the anatomy of the brain. To understand how the brain works, we must first understand the different components that make it up. It consists of the cerebrum, which is also divided into two cerebral hemispheres, the cerebellum and the brainstem. By the way, the word hemisphere, pivkula, contains the part hemi, which means half, and sphere or globe. There is a similar prefix semi, as in the word semicircle, pivkolo. The cortex is the outer part of the brain and is divided into several lobes, such as the frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital. Pay attention to the pronunciation of parietal and occipital. The surface of the cortex is characterized by numerous convolutions called gyri, separated by grooves called sulci. Here are several words with special pronunciation. Surface. It isn't surface, it's surface. Поверхня. Gyri and sulci. These words are in the plural form. The singular is gyrus and sulcus. So convolution zvivana is gyrus and many gyri, but the groove borozna is sulcus and many sulci. That's one more rule for you to learn. US changes to I in the plural. Speaking about the purpose of the cortex, it is responsible for higher level functions such as language and movement. There are two areas responsible for speech: Broca speech area in the frontal lobe and Wernicke area in the temporal lobe. The question is, why do we have two areas responsible for speech? It's easier to understand if we consider the result of the damage to these areas, which causes a language disorder called aphasia, the same Ukrainian term aphasia, and it's pronounced as aphasia in American English. Most often they are caused by the stroke, a colloquial term, or cerebrovascular accident, a medical term, which is insult in Ukrainian. So Broca's aphasia is a non-fluent type of aphasia, which means that a person understands well but has difficulties saying something. It's hard to start and produce speech. On the contrary, Wernicke's aphasia is a fluent type of aphasia, which means that a person speaks without a problem, but his or her speech is meaningless, so you don't understand what the person says. You can find the links to the examples of such disorders in the description. The next part is the cerebellum. Do you remember from the previous video about the rule of how to form the plural of such nouns? Latin terms change their ending um to a. Cerebellum changes to cerebella. Not that bella, just cerebella. It consists of the vermis and intermediate zone, the hemisphere, and the flocculo-nodular lobe. The latter contains the flocculus, klaptek, and the nodulus, vuzlik, and together they form the flocculo-nodular lobe, klaptekovo-vuzlikovo частку. The functions are posture and equilibrium control, muscle tone and movements, and repeated motor functions. One more part of the brain is the brainstem. It is subdivided into the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Another term of the midbrain is mesencephalon. The prefixes mid and meso means the same, middle. So midbrain is mesencephalon, середній мозок. The ventricular system is also worth mentioning. It consists of two lateral ventricles in the cerebral hemispheres, a third ventricle in the midbrain, and a fourth ventricle in the pons and medulla oblongata. It contains an essential substance, the cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, which is spinnomoskova rідина, or liquor. By the way, there is another similar Ukrainian word, liker, which is also a liquid, but the volume is higher. The CSF function is also extremely important. It protects the CNS and performs the clearing process. And if you want to get one more reason to sleep well at night, you will find the link to a science video about the CSF down in the description. I highly recommend watching it. Here is a question for you. Another organ of the human body also containing ventricles is the heart, of course. And how many ventricles does it contain? The correct answer is 2. It has 4 chambers, 2 of which are ventricles, and the other 2 are called atria. They bring us back to the revision of the rule. If atria is plural, the singular would be atrium, which is передсердя in Ukrainian. Let's move on to the next system inside the brain, that is the limbic system involved in emotions, attention, and feeding. Speaking about its structure, let me offer you a kind of an acronym which you can use to remember it better. Here is the visual example. It's a hippo, but the full term is hippopotamus. As you can see, it's a small hippo, and Latin part with the meaning small is hypo. That's why it's a hypohippotamus. Such neologism stands for hypothalamus, hippocampus, thalamus, and amygdala. For Ukrainians, my suggestion is instead of hippopotam, you can learn hippohippotam, hypothalamus, hippocamp, thalamus, и мигдалина. I hope it helps you remember the parts of the limbic system. As we have examined the text and relevant terms, let's deal with some of the exercises. The task of the first one is to read, translate, and state the part of speech. For example, process can be both a verb and a noun. To process information, обробляти інформацію, and a complex process, складний процес. The following set of derivatives can be tricky. The shortest is able, which is an adjective. Здібний, здатний, спроможний. The opposite is unable, нездатний. Don't confuse it with enable, which is a verb, робити здатним, дозволяти. So the opposite verb is to disable, робити неспроможним or забороняти. For example, you can enable or disable the sleep mode in your gadget. Ви можете ввімкнути чи вимкнути режим сну на вашому пристрої. We still have 3 nouns to discuss. Ability, здібність, здатність, спроможність, and 2 opposites, inability, нездатність, неспроможність, and disability, which can have several medical meanings, such as непрацездатність, інвалідність, фізична чи розумова вада. In exercises 2 and 3, you have to find words with similar and opposite meanings. Several minutes ago, we talked about convolution and groove, so you won't have troubles finding the match. I've also mentioned the correct pronunciation of the word surface, поверхня, and the word with a similar meaning is covering, покриття. Another word, vermis, it's an anatomical term for черв'як-мозочка, and a similar word is a worm with the general meaning черв'як, хробак, or even гельмінт. Speaking about the opposites, courage means відвага, хоробрість, and fear, страх. By the way, Ukrainians borrowed this word from French. Have you heard the word courage, meaning запал, удавана хоробрість? Pay attention to the pronunciation of anxiety, тривога, неспокій, тривожність. For instance, the war brought a sense of anxiety to the entire country. Війна викликала відчуття тривоги в усій країні. So the opposite is calmness. There is no sound L in this word. Calmness. The next exercise is 4, and the task is to form adjectives from nouns. Watch out for the words that change completely when forming adjectives, such as, again, surface becomes superficial, поверхневий, skull, cranial, черепний, side, lateral, бічний or laterальний. I'm sure the exercise number 5 will be easy to accomplish. You have to match terms and their definitions. Let me just draw your attention to the word almond. No sound L again, same as calmness that I've mentioned before. The exercise number 6 is a grammar revision. We've talked about the passive voice in the previous video. The link to it in the description, of course. It consists of the verb to be and the verb in the third form or past participle. Remember that most verbs are regular, just the end in ed. For example, the brain is protected by the skull. But some verbs are irregular and change their forms, like in the following sentence. Cortex is found in the parietal lobe. One more interesting thing is the modal verbs, like can, will, or must. After them, just add the verb be, not to be, plus the verb in the third form. For example, tracts can be found in the brainstem. We'll skip some exercises for the sake of time, as their tasks are pretty clear. In number 9, you have to match English and Ukrainian equivalents. 1 Ukrainian and 2 English. One of them is mostly of Latin origin. For instance, передній мозок is prosencephalon and forebrain. Великий мозок is cerebrum and cerebral hemispheres, мозкові півкулі. Exercise number 10 is the preparation for the Croc exam. Here is the case study, and you have to decide which is the most likely site of obstruction. Most likely means найбільш ймовірний or вірогідний. And the site of obstruction is місце обструкції, закупорки, непрохідності, блокади. You can find the correct answer at the bottom of the page, but first try to answer on your own. In the exercise number 10a, you will find not only the description of the ventricular system, but also the explanation why this option is correct and others are false. I'd like to highlight several terms in this exercise. The Latin term foramen, otvir, has the plural form foramina. The word villi, vorsenki, is in the plural form, and the singular one is villus. However, the translation is different in this word combination. Arachnoid villi are повотинні or пахіонові грануляції. Don't say vorsenki in this case. Another interesting term is post-hemorrhage, post-hemorrhagiczny, meaning after bleeding, після кровотечі or крововиливу. Be careful how you write and say this term, hemorrhage, as there are many silent letters. Number
11
will help you put together medical puzzles. Here is another hard-to-say word, pituitary, also known as hypophysis, which is one of the most important glands. That's why they also call it a master gland, because it controls several other glands. The Latin root astro means a star, so astroblast is an immature precursor of an astrocyte, незрілий попередник астроциту, a cell that looks like a star. Do you know a famous Latin phrase, per aspera ad astra, meaning through hardship to the stars, крізь терни до зірок? I know that studying English medical terminology is a hardship, but you will eventually see the stars. Well, at least astrocytes through the microscope. If you still have some room for interesting facts about the brain, then let's move on. The average human brain weighs about 1.5 kilograms, which is equal to the weight of a laptop computer. The brain uses more of the body's energy than the rest of the organs, using over 20% of energy reserves in the body. The brain is more active at night than during the day. The brain generates between 10 to 23 watts of power while awake, which is equivalent to the energy output of 1 to 3 standard light bulbs. Such pictures are not just a simple analogy. The human brain can create up to 60,000 thoughts a day. The brain is made up of 60% fat, or to be more exact, lipids. Are you ready for some really big numbers? The brain can store up to 2.5 petabytes of memory. A petabyte is 10 to the power of 15 bytes, or 1 followed by 15 zeros. You can compare the brain's capacity to approximately 5,000 movies. This is enough memory to store the entire contents of a large public library, including books, audio recordings, and videos. Just for the record, the correct way of saying such numbers is 10 to the power of 15, 10 в 15 степені. The human brain has a processing power of about a quintillion calculations per second. It's 1 followed by 18 zeros. It's approximately the number of grains of sand in the world. As you can see, the human brain is an amazing organ. By understanding the anatomy and the different parts of the brain, we can gain insight into how our brains process information and how we interact with the world around us. I hope this video has been useful and interesting. Did you enjoy it? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to share it, subscribe, hit the like button, and press the notification bell not to miss any future videos. Bye.